What's the craziest thing you've gotten away with? Story 1. While in high school, I wanted to buy some alcohol for my best friend's birthday, but not only was I a minor, I was broke, like negative account balance broke. So what did I do? I walked into a big major chain grocery store, studied the clerk's movements like some kind of a stealth game, then walked to the alcohol aisle, grabbed 2 boxes of 24 can, and just walked out of the store to the parking lot where other friends were waiting in the car, ready for extraction. The first heist gave me a huge adrenaline rush, but the next one was easier, and the next 10 trips even more so, and they were always to the same store. I still can't believe I didn't get caught. Story 2. I once stole a Pano chocolate from Sainsbury's. It was in the same bag as a croissant, and I told the self-service checkout about the croissant, then had to put the bag in the bagging area. The machine was none the wiser. I sauntered out of there like a... Story 3. When I was younger, I had my mum order an ant farm for me. Now, there were 2 options: normal ants and fire ants. You can guess which one I wanted. Mum buys me the fire ants, because I'm a good kid and we, living in SoCal, have no idea what fire ants are even about. I'm sure it's just a name that sounds cool, or something. Ants arrive. Holy yes, I set up the farm, fill it with ants, and set it carefully outside as per said. Mum, you can't keep that in the house. I love my ants, and take the best of care of them. My brother, however, is a little, and he accidentally kicks them over while playing basketball. Ants escape. Oh no, but what do we care? They're ants, right? Actually no, turns out that I caused one of the little stars on this map. Whoops. Edit obligatory gold, thanks. What do I do with it? Story 4. Running through the jungle to escape Vietnamese guards who were intending to turn us in for trying to climb Mt. Fansipan, highest peak in Indochina, without a permit. Either that or hitting a man with a cheeseburger while driving 45 miles per hour. Story 5. I have a couple. Most colleges have their seniors do something right. A 40-page paper is usually the norm, or something like that. Mine was waived. Just, my doctorate professor said it, you don't need to do it. As far as I know, that's happened to exactly 0 other people from my college. I once passed out on my roof, fell off, dropped 12 feet, landed on a steel bar horizontal, flipped twice and landed on my neck. I didn't feel it. Still don't know what happened. I should be dead. Edit. Okay, to clarify, I was getting my bachelor's degree, not my PhD. Also, yes, I technically know what happened. I just don't remember it all that well, and I don't know how I was uninjured. Story 6. Junior year of high school. I never turned in an essay that was worth a large percentage of my English grade. When my teacher called me over while she was entering grades into the computer and asked about it, I used my excellent lying skills to act completely confused. Because of course I turned it in, and what was she talking about? Because I had always been an awesome student, she thought it was her fault and that she had lost it. She told me she actually did remember reading it, and typed a 95100 into the online grading system. It must have been one of an imaginary essay. Story 7. When I was 13 and 14, I went on these adrenaline runs in the early morning, like 300 to 500. I would go to the woods and make a small fire, kill a squirrel, cook it and eat it. It was private property and there was a curfew. Story 8. My parents, me, and my 2 sisters once escaped through the Iron Curtain in the middle of the night, via a train we were not supposed to be on, from Poland to West Germany. I had no idea what was happening. We all thought we were going on a vacation to Yugoslavia. That's what my parents told everyone, me, my sisters, their parents, friends, family, co-workers, and next thing you know we're in a West German immigration camp. It was a very crazy family journey. We now live in Canada and love it here. Story 9. Me and wife were on honeymoon in Malaysia. It was Chinese New Year's holiday and we were in Hentang Highlands. There was a huge convention center which was hosting a huge Chinese lunch buffet and stage show. Chinese people bought expensive tickets to it. Me and wife went to the bouncer and asked if we could just take a look inside. He said okay, go on, don't take too much time. We rolled in. It was extravagant and huge and decorated awesomely with food tables on the side with every imaginable Asian food goodie. It was lunchtime and we were hungry. Once the food started serving, we also went with the flow and I had the best original Chinese food in my life. All sorts of goodies. After having a good time, we went through the exit. All this time we were feeling very nervous. Just as we were about to disappear, the bouncer called us and said, wait. My heart came to my throat. He said, here, have 2 complimentary Chinese oranges for each of you. It's for all the guests. I was like, thank you, good sir. Then we disappeared from sight. D. Story 10. I used to bring knives to school, not because I wanted to stab anyone, but I just carried knives around and would forget. I realize now with how serious they are about weapons in schools, I could have gotten in a lot of trouble. Story 11. When I was in college, I worked retail at a very well-known retail store. A friend of mine pointed out to me that a co-worker stole by dropping items in a gap between the loading dock and where trucks connected. I would drop DVDs, CDs, and 360 games and pick them up after my shift. I easily stole at least over 1,000 worth of merchandise. Edit. The pay was absolute too, so I have no regrets. Edit 2. Holy, this blew up when I was sleeping. For the record, this is the only time in my life I ever stole, and it's the worst thing I ever did in my life. If that's the worst thing I ever did, I think I can live with myself. I had an excuse to do it, but of course it wasn't justifiable. At the time I thought I was a broke college student barely scraping by. Edit 3. Jesus. So my top-rated comment on Reddit is when for the first time ever I admit the worst thing I've ever done. Okie dokie then. Story 12. While at a wedding, I drunkenly climbed onto the roof of the bar we were at and stole a shingle. I then proceeded to take the shingle back into the bar, place it on the seat next to me, and call it my new drinking buddy. Story 13. I sold cocaine and ecstasy pills for over 2 years. Never got caught by the law. My closest encounter was when I got stopped by the police for drinking in public sidewalk next to my friend's house. I had my car parked a few houses down. They identified it by the logo on my keys and proceeded to check the inside for any kind of illegal items. I had 10 baggies with cocaine stashed in the gas chamber. They searched everywhere, but that was the closest I got to ever getting caught. To clarify, it was done by the Los Angeles sheriffs, so if you expected any kind of respect of the law from them, tough luck toots. I already knew that what they were doing was illegal, but since they had me over a barrel with the public drinking and I had a load of coke in the gas tank, I figured it's best to keep my mouth shut, and if I were to get caught I should just lawyer up and hope for the evidence to be dismissed. Jesus Christ, guys. Gas chamber where you pump the gas into. I used to open up the flap and keep my drugs hidden in there. In the years that I sold I never had a cop search there. It's a good place to hide stuff, but not guaranteed 100% effective. Story 14. Absolutely nothing. For everything I have ever done wrong I was punished fully and immediately. I am currently serving 8 life sentences simultaneously at 6 different prisons. I've also been executed twice. True story. Story 15. I don't know if it's crazy, but it's my favorite thing I've gotten away with. I was apartment hunting in LA and found this cottage that I liked pretty well. It was pretty convenient to work, the perfect size, and offered a lot of privacy. The only problem was that the landlady struck me as someone who would make me miserable, and I wasn't all that keen on the actual location, but it was in my budget and I did not have a lot of time to work with, so I signed the lease and gave her half of the deposit, with the agreement that I'd pay the rest of the deposit at move-in. Just by chance, I happened across a Craigslist ad for another place in a much better location that was even more perfect for me. Even knowing that I shouldn't, I drove up to see the place and fell in instant love and knew I had to have the place. The question was, how do I get out of the lease without losing my deposit? Based on some of the stuff the landlord had said, even a day late on rent was considered unacceptable, etc., I devised a plan. I called her and confirmed that I'd be moving in on the 1st, but asked if she'd be willing to give me 5 extra days to pay the remainder of the deposit. If she wanted, I said, I'd wait until I'd paid to move in, but with the holidays and everything, I was just a little short of the rest of the money. She was instantly icy and told me no, she wasn't interested in waiting for the deposit, and as a matter of fact, she felt it would be best if I just picked up the deposit I'd already left and canceled the lease, so I did exactly that and moved into my dream place instead. Story 16. Not really the craziest thing I've done, but I got out of a speeding ticket about 15 over by telling the cop that I was just excited to see my brother again since he just got back from deployment. Some people will say that was pretty scummy of me to lie about. But for something I came up with while the cop was walking to my car, I thought it was pretty good. Story 17. Late to the party, but I'll share a story anyway. It was my freshman year of college and I was fortunate enough to be driving a Subaru WRX right after they first came out. Those things were hot stuff in the import world because there was finally a semi-affordable car that could almost keep up with the domestics of the day. I was home for break cruising around my hometown when I happened upon a Porsche Boxster S. Now my car had attained a few modifications at this point and I was confident that I could beat him. He, being a young male in a yellow Porsche, was happy to oblige. We were heading down a long straight road that ended at the gate of a Navy base, so there was minimal traffic and it was later at night. Perfect for a street race. The light turns green and we are off. To my surprise and glee, I'm winning. At about 75 miles per hour, I see this light waving back and forth in the middle of the road. I start to slow down as this is an unusual sight. Upon further inspection, I realize it's a police officer. We couldn't see his car because it was parked on a side street and he was helping someone else out. He obviously heard us coming and waved us down. When we approached, still rolling, he yelled in my window to pull over. The Porsche took the lead onto the side street, and just as it looked like we were done for, he took off. I wasn't going to be left holding the back, so I jumped on it as well. As I rounded the first corner, I looked in my rear view to see the officer running to get into his car and pursue us. I know the area like the back of my hand, and I was only about 1.5 miles away from home, so I was fairly confident I'd be able to lose him. Weaving through back streets, I carefully made my way back to my parents' house. They have a long driveway that is somewhat obstructed from street view. I remember creeping up the driveway and sitting in my car for what seemed like hours waiting to see the police drive by. Luckily, after about 20 minutes all was quiet, so I exited the car and stared at the ceiling all night thinking about what I was. That ended my street racing career. Edit words. Story 18. Somehow I made it through education half-arsed, and I mean half-arsed, and landed a pretty sweet job. Compared to some friends who took education seriously but couldn't make it in the end, this is crazy. Story 19. When I was 17 or 18 years old, I was in Germany with some friends. We were drinking at a bar, and after that we went back to our camping site. On the way back to the camping site we wanted to take a traffic sign, so I hopped on someone's shoulders and start unscrewing the traffic sign. Then one of my friends says that he saw a police car passing us by, so we started running away and I ran away from my friends and hid in the bushes. The cops came back and started searching for us in the bushes I was in with flashlights and everything I could see their shoes since I was looking down. After 5 minutes or so they drove off. That was also the quickest I went from drunk to sober because of all the adrenaline. TLDR got drunk, wanted to take a traffic sign home, cops drove by, hid in the bushes, never got caught. Story 20 In college, I hunted rabbits on campus in the middle of the night. I used my blowgun and my friend used a hand crossbow. I now know that we could have easily been arrested or shot, but we still had a blast. Edit yes. Of course we ate them, otherwise it would be weird. We stopped after one night when we hit some poor rabbit like 4 times, but never managed to recover it. That means it probably died slowly by bleeding out somewhere. I felt so bad about it we never went out again. Story 21 I don't ever post on Reddit. I just read everything all day at work, but I feel like I had to post here. When I was a teenager and probably into my 20s, I had a habit of stealing lawn ornaments off people's lawns. It started with a single lawn gnome, which is still sitting in my parents' front yard, and quickly escalated to an all-night, every night activity. During my years of lawn ornament poaching I managed to cross the line numerous times. Since Virgin Mary statues were way more common than lawn gnomes, we would steal those a lot. Sometimes we'd drive around and collect them for hours and then put like 10 of them on someone else's lawn, so when they came outside in the morning there would be a bunch of creepy religious statues staring at them. Pretty funny to me, but maybe scary or offensive to somebody who was deeply religious. We took this one person's Virgin Mary statue at least 6 different times. They kept replacing it, we kept taking it. Sometimes we knew whose house we were statue bombing and sometimes we didn't. Another time we drove around all night stealing Christmas decorations and decorated the Jewish temple with them. Apparently this was seen as a hate crime, even though I totally just wanted to be ironic. Another time we stole someone's Halloween decoration, a giant dummy with a pumpkin head, and returned it a year later with a cryptic note about it being kidnapped, but just know that I was loved. Sometimes I still get the urge to take weird things off lawns, but I stop myself because I am near 30 now and I can't even imagine how I de-explain myself that I got caught now. I never did get caught for any of that. I think once we got pulled over for throwing parking cones out the car window, but nobody could prove it was us and we left the scene without so much as a seatbelt ticket. I should have felonies out to wazoo, but my record is clean, and I still have that first lawn gnome too. I'm waiting for some teenager to steal it. Story 22 Lying during my entire high school career about basically everything in my life. No one found out a thing. Edit for people saying oh they knew. I asked them after school was over. They all said they believed me. Story 23 Once when I was younger, around our late teens, me and a group of friends would get together and just hang around. We all lived in a small town, and like you may guess, we would get up to no good from time to time. Anyway, one day me and my friends were coming out of Burger King or something similar, and I saw a police car sitting parked next to the road. I went up to it to see if anyone was inside, but there wasn't. The car was left on and the keys were still inside. Seeing that I was young and incredibly stupid, I decided it would be a good idea to get in the car. I looked around to see where the policeman was, but I couldn't see him anyway. I jumped in the car and started driving it. My friends were just standing outside in disbelief at what I was doing. Anyway, I took it for a short spin feeling incredibly cool, until I arrived back outside the restaurant. I parked it in the same spot and got out. Almost as soon as I closed the door the policeman walked out of the front door a couple of shops over and called out for me to get away from that car. I said I was sorry and we all walked off free and with my friends calling me an idiot. It was a good day, TLDR, was young, stole and joyrode a cop car and got away scot-free. Story 24 Once I was really drunk and closed a 4-lane road with fences from a nearby building site in the middle of the night. A police car came just when I was about to leave and started chasing me. I was on my bike and pedaled away as fast as I could. I had a head start of no more than 30 m. I made it around the corner and was out of sight of the police car for no more than 4 seconds. I stopped, hid my bike in some bushes, took off my coat, turned around and just started walking towards the police car. The police car just drove past me, noticing me but not understanding I was the same person. I could hear the police car driving through the neighborhood trying to find me, while I just quietly walked away. I returned 2 hours later to retrieve my bike. Really felt like Jason Bourne doing that, and I am still amazed I came up with this plan and executed it so flawlessly. Story 25 One summer I almost made my father lose his mind. He's always been obsessed with the health of the grass in the yard and how perfect and green it is. If there's a shred of discoloration or crabgrass, he's all over it immediately. So one night when I had been drinking with my friends, I went out and peed in the lawn. For no particular reason and not out of spite, I just has to go. A few days later big yellow patch of dead grass appeared where I had peed. My dad flipped out, completely puzzled as to where it came from. He put an entire bag of sod on it with the assumption the grass would grow back. Thinking his obsession with it was funny, I snuck out at night and peed all over it again. This cycle of my dad flipping out and me watching his hysterics trying not to laugh and continuing to pee on the spot went on for an entire summer. The grass never grew back that year and his entire summer was spoiled. He still brings it up to this day, puzzled about it could have been. Story 26 When I was in 8th grade, my school had nature trails and secret paths in the woods behind the school. No students were allowed in there, so naturally, the woods were packed with kids during lunch. One day, I was wearing a red jacket with a blue shirt underneath, and was walking through the woods. Then a dean rounds the bend about 100 yards in front of me and sees me cause of my red jacket. He yells something at me and I take off running towards the school. This particular dean had it out for me and my friends for some unknown reason, so I knew my punishment would be harsh if I got caught. When I was within a maze of portables, I rounded a corner and took off my jacket, and threw it under the portable. Then I whipped out my Yu-Gi-Oh and started pretending like I was playing with some 7th graders who were sitting on the ground and who saw the whole thing. About 30 seconds later, the dean rounds the corner and almost overlooks me, but then tries to take me to the office. The kids I were playing with started yelling back at him saying how I was here the whole time and some other kid with a red jacket ran through there a second ago. So the dean kinda looks at me for a second, then runs towards where we said to go. Story 27. When I was very young and extremely poor with a baby, my grocery budget was $50 to $80 per week. Milk and meat were the two most expensive items. I purchased no formula. I nursed for as long as she would take the breast. I would always put my gallon of whole milk under the cart, on the flat rack. Didn't pay for milk for probably a year that way. Felt guilt shame every single week, but I was in a very bad situation, literally didn't eat some days. Milk at least had plenty of calories so I could keep producing breast milk. I always figured if I got caught, I would just pull I forgot didn't see it down there and pay the $2.99 gracefully. My life is so completely different, escaped abuse now, but I am dedicated to living my life being overly honest. I will not even slow roll through a stop sign on a deserted road in the middle of the night to make up for the bad karma, and contributing much time household items to the women's shelters that saved me. Story 28. On a 3-hour drive back to college, got stopped on a 65 going 83 at 11:30 p.m., had a half ounce of shrooms, a fourth of weed, and a fifth of vodka in my backpack and only given a warning. Story 29. In college we were required to have an internship for 1 year. Apparently the summer before I started the internship I was supposed to get a letter in the mail with a list of places I could intern at, but I never got the letter. By the time the year started it was too late to get an internship anywhere. It was my senior year so I didn't have another year to do my internship, so I just made one up. I said I was working with an online literary magazine. I completely faked the evaluations, made up my own work to do, and gave a presentation at the end of the year about my experience. As far as I know no one suspected anything. Story 30. Sort of boring, but I gave my entire college class an extra week to work on a 12-page paper that I had forgotten about. The professor had a lot of classes, and he really liked me, so when I reminded him that he had told us the paper wasn't due for another week he bought it. Of course one of the goody two-shoes in the class tried to correct me, but everyone around her shut her up. Story 31. Several years ago in the late 90s, I worked part-time for a janitorial company. One night we got a contract to strip and wax the floors at a local Best Buy. The general manager of the store, his name was Bob, oversaw our operations, probably just making sure we weren't stealing and whatnot. After the job was done, that following day I went back into the store to buy a video game I spotted the night before. With my receipt in hand from the video game I just bought, I walked over to someone in the TV area, held up my receipt, and said, "Bob told me to get one of you guys to help me take one of these TVs out to my truck." Needless to say he didn't check my receipt and got 2 other guys to help me carry a 1200 big screen TV right out the front door. Story 32. When I was 16-17, I asked a random guy to buy me GTA 3 in what was probably Electronic Boutique at the time. This was in the UK. Game was rated 18, and they take it seriously there. Went outside and waited for him to come out. He thankfully did not steal my money and did buy me the game. I ended up working for our North on GTA 5, so I like to feel this lapse in legality was for a good eventual cause. Story 33. 8-year-old cousin tripped, blamed it on me when it was not, fought and proved I did not trip her, by mistake or intentionally, ran past me later that day and I tripped her, she broke her arm, everyone just assumed she was dumb and clumsy and blamed her. No one knows since no one else is commenting. I got out of doing a whole physics assignment, it was worth quite a bit of the grade too, no one mentioned a word about it. Yeah, my life is pretty boring. Story 34. In my freshman year of high school, I was taking my economics final. Now, I'm taking tests, and this one was no exception. It was a 180 question test, and we had 15 minutes left to take it. I had only answered 85 or so. I'm stressing out because I have half of it done. As I'm trying to break at least 90, I hear everyone start flipping there. As it turns out, the kid in front of me fainted. He had to be pulled out in a wheelchair, and was pale as an albino ghost. After the teacher comes back, she said due to the disturbance, she would just grade what we had done. I nearly voided my bowels from the wave of relaxation that flowed through my body. Got a 90. Story 35. Back in the 90s when everyone had dial-up internet, phone and psychic hotlines ran credit cards in batches long after the call was over. The only thing they verified beforehand was that the card number was valid. Validity was determined by computer software that would check for certain requirements, like the first 4 digits matching the card issuer and some algorithm that was used to generate card numbers that was also used in those days for verifying them. There was a program called CCWIZ for Windows 3. One that would extrapolate a bunch of fake numbers from any real one by using this algorithm, and the fake numbers would work on these hotlines. In fact, I am pretty sure you could have done much more illegal things like shopping with overnight shipping, but that would have been a good way to wind up in jail, or at least juvenile hall. I was 12 at the time. Story 36. Hey race, the semi-TLDR version. I'm on mobile, saved up 4K selling pot, drive out to Cali with a couple friends, wound up at the top of this mountain buying a bunch of trim from this big time grower, made hash, bought bud from this Mexican family that lived next to the hippies we were crashing with. Packaged it up in vacuum-sealed bags inside of paint buckets, shipped the boxes next day delivery, flew home, woke up the next morning and picked the boxes up from my buddy's doorstep. No tracking devices in the boxes. Success. Story 37. When I was in 8th grade, I was really desperate for a little money for some reason, so I devised a little something to make a quick $20 one day. Like most guys in middle school, my friends and I liked to mess with each other all the time, and at that time our favorite way of doing so was by secretly learning each other's locker combos. We had to buy our own locks for our lockers then and holding it over the other person's head that you knew their combo. That way you could pretend to steal their stuff if they made fun of you and the sorts. Well, one day I realized that my good friend, let's call him R, had been made fun of jokingly by my other friend, we'll call him B. Naturally, I knew BS combo like any good friend. Here's where the money gets involved. I sold BS combo to R for 10. R then goes to steal BS lock so that his locker is literally open to anyone walking by. After B realizes this, I offer to sell him another lock, a spare I kept with me in case anyone tried this on me, for 10. He immediately accepts. R never figured out how B got a new lock so quickly, and B never realized I sold his combo to R in the first place. No one found out, administration was never involved, and I made an easy $20. Story 38. Not me but 3 of my good buddies. Long story short, our floor 4th floor had a beef with another floor 1st floor in our dorm building at college. One night a 1st floorian proceeded to vomit shite so explosively all over our bathroom that it prompted a retaliatory strike. The next night, my 3 friends proceeded to utterly defile the 1st floor men's bathroom. They pissed on the toilet paper, puked in the shower, and birthed mud monkeys throughout the bathroom. The ringleader of the group, who we'll call Tim, then ripped a whiteboard off a 1st floor door and wrote the now famous 4th floor motto, "If you mess with the bull, you get the." This was left in their group lounge to make sure the message hit home. Despite having told our entire floor before sunrise that day, in addition to the 1st floor knowing that it was surely our doing couldn't prove it, this incident went unpunished for 2 months. In a drunken stupor, one of our guys let slip the names of all parties involved in the poopscapade. In a miracle of sorts, the honor court at my university decided that there was not enough evidence for conviction even with a complete confession. Needless to say, it earned these guys legendary status amongst the group. TLDR, if someone messes with the bull, they get the. Story 39. Scratched my rental car last week on a stone gate post. Handed it back and stood in front of the scratches whilst the guy was checking it. Got my full deposit back. Only time in 7 years driving I've damaged a car. Climbed a tree next to a road and threw mud bombs at unsuspecting passing cars. Police got called one day and they asked us if we knew anything about it. Lied and said there were some kids in the field earlier and it could have been them. Lucky they didn't check our hands, which were caked in mud. This is a pretty bad one, but 10-year-olds do stupid stuff. Story 40. I passed a subject at uni without handing in any of the 3 assignments. Needed no tests for this one. Only written assignments. Nor just pass though, I got a credit. To this day I don't know how I did it. Story 41. Ever since I was a kid, I was into chemistry. Got my first absolutely safe chemistry set when I was 11 and proceeded to prove the people that made it wrong in insisting it was absolutely safe by pretty much napalming my bedroom, our cat included. But I digress. When I was 16, a friend of mine started studies to become a lab technician. As such, he could get his hands on all sorts of kick chemicals: iodine, saltpeter, magnesium, potassium permanganate, sulfuric acid, fine-grain aluminium powder, the works. But there was one thing we never managed to get hold of, no matter how hard he tried: RFNA, or red fuming nitric acid, a key component for making most high explosives. And Lord knows we tried, but that stuff was hard to come by. I imagine it's even harder nowadays. At the end of his first year, our wish finally came true. My friend managed to nick a flask of some 500 milliliters RFNA. We already had some high molarity redacted acid. All we needed was redacted, a specific type of hydrocarbon and some specific instructions. The hydrocarbon was procured from our local DY market and purified through some fractional distillation. As for the instructions, we did some searching online, stumbling across numerous versions of Jolly Roger's infamous anarchist's cookbook, until we found a recipe in our local library. And we were set. My parents went on vacation and me and my friend set up a small lab in our garden, where we tried to make some 75 grams of TNT, yes, I said TNT, 2 boys, 117, and 119, making high explosives on a sunny summer day, sitting in the sun and drinking beer. NL here. Drinking age was 16 at the time. No safety measures other than a thermometer for keeping an eye on the reaction, and a bucket of water to wash of any splashes that might occur. The only thing that my parents ever wondered about were the strange markings on the tiles. We may have splashed some redacted acid there, and of course the crater in the lawn when we finally did manage to detonate a small amount of TNT 3 days later. Story 42. I once acted like I was holding open a door for a long line of people coming out of church, but the door had a kickstand and I just wanted to lean on something. I got so many thank yous. Story 43. In an English writing class, my professor returned my paper saying that he wanted me to rewrite it and put a little more work into it. 3 days later I handed him the same exact essay and I got it back with an A. Fantastic writing grade. Story 44. Just finished coming on my girlfriend's face when her mom walked in. She had a bunk bed and we were up top, and the NES was still on, and as the door opened I quickly flipped around and laid down next to her and carried on playing games. Her mom had a good 30-second conversation with her about her schedule that day or something, and she just kept her head pointed at the screen, avoided eye contact and carried on the conversation smoothly. She had a conversation with her mom with a face full of. Story 45. Rode on the side of a subway train, and managed to jump off and fall on the ground before getting slammed into the subway station wall. I juggled fire staff techniques using a scythe. I up and managed to thrust the blade into my belly, but it didn't go inside. Used to shoplift a lot. Once when hungry I shoplifted 2 bananas, and got caught by plain clothes. I managed to convince them of that I should just go and pay for the bananas and let off with a warning. Since I didn't have a criminal record, I did that, but I only paid for one of the bananas. I exited the store while apologizing to the police officers and telling them how guilty I felt, while the second banana was still in my pocket. Got away safely. I do not condone shoplifting. I jumped up and danced Cossack dance the roof of a guard box to a coal power plant during a violent riot. On the one side there was violent protesters. On the other we had violent policemen in riot gear. Once I had done that I jumped across the 7-foot-tall barbed wire fence into the crowd. I did not get arrested afterwards. The day after, a female friend of mine in high school had her glorious behind unwillingly grabbed repeatedly by in her class. I groped the out of him in order to make him know what it felt like to be touched in ways you don't want to be touched. I did not get beat up by his crew, and he didn't do it again. Not sure about the causative relationship there though. At 3 in the morning, in the middle of January at -4 F20C and high winds, I climbed to the top of a 80-foot-tall cell phone tower. Once at the top, I superglued a bowling pin to the top. It was a tagged item that belonged to another cocky urban exploration crew. We just wanted to pawn them, and my thumb got caught in the superglue. I managed to rip it off though, before I went hypothermic.